What if I told you it's actually easier to go broke on $200,000 a year than it is on $50,000? Stay with me, because by the end of this, that sentence is going to make complete sense. Before you scroll past this, I want you to think about someone you know. Someone who works long hours, who drives a nice car, who picks up the check at dinner and always seems like they have it figured out. Someone whose life from the outside looks like the version of success most people are still chasing. Maybe you've envied them a little. Maybe that person is you. Quick question, and be honest with yourself. If your income stopped tomorrow, how many months could you survive on what you actually have saved? Not what you earn, not what your salary says on paper, what you actually have, right now, in the account. Most people in Nathan's position couldn't answer that question. Most people watching this right now can't either. Because here is what nobody talks about. A high income is not the same thing as financial safety. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. This is the story of Nathan Cole, 41 years old, senior vice president at a private equity firm in Chicago, a man who deposited more money in a single month than most people earn in a year, $200,000 annually, a penthouse apartment on the 43rd floor, a car that cost more than most people's mortgages, a watch that could have paid a year of someone's college tuition. And here's what's uncomfortable about Nathan's story. When you heard $200,000 a year just now, something in your brain quietly thought, okay, he had options, he had runway, he was safe. That assumption right there is the exact thing that destroys people like Nathan. And it might be the most expensive belief you're carrying right now without knowing it. By every conventional measure, Nathan Cole was the last person on Earth this should have happened to, which is precisely why it did. Here is the number I need you to hold in your mind: 91 days. That is how long it took. From the peak of everything Nathan had built to the day he sat alone in an empty apartment with a disconnected phone, a stack of unopened legal envelopes, and a decision to make about whether to call his brother and admit what had happened. 91 days. Stay with me, because this story isn't about a bad person who made obvious mistakes. It's about a smart person, a disciplined, educated, high-achieving person who believed one fundamental lie about money, and it cost him everything. To understand how Nathan got here, you have to understand where he started. He grew up in Rockford, Illinois, a mid-sized city about 90 miles outside of Chicago that has seen better decades. His parents were not poor, but they were not comfortable either. His father ran a small auto repair shop. His mother was a school administrator. They lived modestly, they paid their bills, they saved carefully, and quietly, and without complaint. Nathan was the kid who noticed everything. He noticed that the families with the biggest houses drove past his neighborhood to get to theirs. He noticed which of his classmates got new sneakers every September. He noticed with the quiet clarity of a child who understands more than adults assume that money created a kind of invisibility, that having it made you matter in ways that had nothing to do with who you actually were. He decided very early that he would have it. And he delivered on that promise to himself in ways that would have been hard to imagine from that Rockford neighborhood. Full academic scholarship, University of Illinois, MBA from Northwestern, one of the most competitive business programs in the country. First job at a consulting firm, then a move into private equity, where the compensation was the kind that makes people outside the industry assume there must be a typo. By 35, he was earning more money than he had imagined possible as a kid watching those families drive past. By 41, $200,000 a year, bonuses not included. He was, by every external measure, winning. But here is the thing about external measures. They only measure what's visible. And what was happening inside Nathan Cole's finances, beneath the penthouse, the car, the watch, the image, was something almost nobody around him knew about. Nathan Cole was not wealthy. Nathan Cole was performing wealth. And there is a difference, a vast, dangerous, life-altering difference between those two things. The lifestyle had crept up on him gradually, the way it always does for people who reach a certain income level fast. The penthouse, $8,400 a month. The leased BMW 7 Series, $1,650 a month. Dinners at restaurants where the wine list started at $200 a bottle, because that was what people in his circle did, and opting out felt like admitting something he wasn't ready to admit. Weekend trips to New York, Miami, Vegas, because saying no felt the same way. There were tailored suits, a personal trainer, a wine subscription he had forgotten he signed up for, a storage unit across town holding furniture from an apartment he'd left 2 years ago and never dealt with. He was spending approximately $19,000 a month. After taxes on $200,000, Nathan took home roughly $11,500. Let that settle. He was earning $200,000 a year and spending $228,000. The gap was being filled by credit, 3 premium credit cards, each carrying a balance he had been rotating and refinancing for years. A personal line of credit opened during a period when rates were low and the logic seemed sound. A loan taken against his 401k, just temporarily, he told himself, to cover a cash shortfall 18 months earlier. On paper, Nathan's net worth was negative, substantially negative. But nobody around him knew, because nobody was looking at his balance sheets. They were looking at exactly what Nathan wanted them to look at: the address, the car, the watch. And then, in one single week in October, 3 things happened simultaneously that the financial house of cards had never been built to survive. Pay attention here, because this is the week everything changed. First, the private equity firm announced a restructuring. Nathan's entire division was eliminated. His position, the one generating the $200,000, the one the entire architecture of his life depended on, was gone. 2 weeks severance, a letter of recommendation, a handshake. Second, the bank holding his largest credit line called in the full balance. A clause in the agreement he had signed 3 years earlier, never read closely enough, triggered a full repayment demand upon loss of primary employment. Third, and this is the part that still lives in Nathan's chest when he talks about it, his fiancée Claire, whom he had been with for 4 years, whom he had proposed to 8 months earlier, sat down across from him at the kitchen island and asked one question. She asked him to show her what they actually had. Not the lifestyle, not the upcoming reservations, not the plans. What they actually had. He sat down across from her, and for the first time in years, he told the truth. The next 90 days moved the way Nathan still describes as surreal. Too fast and too slow at the same time. Without income, the credit card minimums became impossible within 30 days. He missed payments, interest rates spiked. Balances grew even as he stopped spending entirely. He liquidated what little he had in a taxable brokerage account, $34,000, and watched it disappear against the debt within weeks. He applied for jobs, senior roles at firms he had worked alongside for years. But the private equity world is small, and the restructuring had come with whispers, the way these things always do, and the callbacks were slower than he expected. Month 2, he surrendered the car. He missed the lease payment, and the dealership sent someone to collect it. He watched from the lobby of his building as they drove it away. He was taking the train to interviews now, which would have been fine, is fine for most people, except Nathan had built an identity so completely around the appearance of success that showing up without the armor he'd worn for 15 years felt like arriving without skin. By month 3, the landlord served formal notice. The 43rd floor apartment, the one with the view of the lake, the one that had cost him $8,400 every single month for 6 years, was no longer his. Claire had moved out in month 2, not with anger, with something quieter and more final than anger. She packed over 3 days, methodically, and left a note on the kitchen island that said simply, "I fell in love with you, not this. I just needed to know the difference, and now I do." Nathan moved into a furnished studio, $1,100 a month. He sat in it alone the first night with a stack of legal envelopes he had been avoiding for 3 weeks. 41 years old, over $2 million earned in the previous decade, less than $800 in his checking account. He called his brother that night. His younger brother Daniel, who taught high school history in Rockford, who drove a 2014 Honda Accord, who had a wife, 3 kids, a modest house with a yard, and a savings account he added to every single month without exception. Nathan had always been the successful one. Daniel had always been the steady one. These were the roles they had played for 20 years, at every family dinner, in every phone call, in the quiet, unspoken arithmetic of how 2 brothers from the same house can end up living such different versions of the same life. Nathan sat on the edge of the bed in that furnished studio and told his brother everything. The debt, the spending, the gap between what he had been earning and the way he had been living, the years of rotating credit balances, the 401k loan, the way it had all been held together by image and avoidance and a refusal to look directly at the numbers. Nathan listened. He didn't say a word until Nathan was finished. He didn't say, "I told you so." He said, "Nate, do you need a place to stay?" Nathan Cole, former SVP, 43rd floor, BMW in the garage, started to cry. Not because of the money, because of what it had cost him beyond the money. The years spent performing instead of living, the relationship built on a foundation that wasn't real, the version of himself he had constructed so carefully for so long that he had almost forgotten what was underneath it. Nathan's story is not about a high income. It's about what happens when income becomes an identity instead of a tool. And it is far more common than the people living it will ever admit out loud. Research consistently shows that a significant share of Americans earning 6 figures live paycheck to paycheck, not because $100,000 or $200,000 isn't enough money, but because lifestyle inflation scales with income for people who never learned that the purpose of earning more is to save the gap, not fill it with spending. Here is what Nathan knows now that he wishes he had understood then. First, income is not wealth. Assets are wealth. A paycheck stops the moment the job does. An asset, a paid-off property, an investment account, a business generating cash flow, keeps working without you. Nathan had income for 15 years and almost no assets. The day the paycheck stopped, everything built on top of it collapsed. Second, lifestyle inflation is silent and lethal. It doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in $200 at a time, $800 at a time, an upgrade that feels earned, a standard of living that slowly becomes a cage. The rule that would have saved Nathan: every time your income increases, save at least 50% of the increase before you spend a single dollar of it. Third, the appearance of wealth is the enemy of actual wealth. Every dollar Nathan spent on the image, the watch, the address, the car, the restaurant, was a dollar that did not compound, it did not grow, it did not protect him the day the restructuring email arrived. It performed for people who were not paying his bills. Fourth, debt used to maintain a lifestyle has a slow trigger and a fast collapse. The credit card minimum that seems manageable in month 1 becomes a cascade by month 3. Emergency funds, zero consumer debt, and a savings rate that can survive a job loss are not habits for cautious people. They are the architecture of a life that can withstand reality. And fifth, knowing who you are without the income is the most important financial question you will ever answer. Nathan didn't know, and that unknown cost him not just money, but the relationship, the years, and a version of himself he had spent 2 decades carefully avoiding. Nathan Cole lives in Rockford now. Back in the city, he spent his entire adult life trying to leave. He rents a small house 3 streets from where Daniel lives. He took a consulting role, part-time at first, steadily growing. The salary is a fraction of what it was. He drives a used car he paid for in cash. He has no credit card debt. For the first time since he was 26 years old, he has no credit debt. Pause. He told a podcast interviewer recently, something I want you to carry with you when this video ends. He said, pause. I spent 15 years building a life that looked successful. I needed 90 days to lose it. And I needed to lose it to finally understand what I was actually supposed to be building. Pause. He's not rebuilding the penthouse. He's not rebuilding the car or the watch or the 43rd floor view of the lake. He is building something that doesn't require an audience to have value. Pause. If this story landed somewhere real for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it before they learn it the hard way. And if you're already in the middle of something like this, leave a comment below. You are not alone, and it is not too late. Pause. The goal was never the income. The goal was always the freedom, and those are not the same thing.